Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where the Power Rangers cast is drunk with power. And I'm not quite sure why, because Power Rangers is a modest hit. I mean, the cast is very talented, but it's not like people went to see the movie for them or that they've absolutely blown all the industry projections out of the water. They improved upon the projections, but I don't really think they're in a position to be making demands, particularly this demand, and that's that they want the Green Ranger, aka Tommy Oliver, to be a girl. Their argument, it would put the team at 3 boys and 3 girls. And then some SJWs in the comment sections on this news pushed it a step further and said, I think this would be a great idea, yeah. And then this female Green Ranger could have a relationship with the Yellow Ranger, who was announced to be a member of the LGBT community right before the movie was released. And then when the movie came out, that you saw that they didn't really do anything with that. Now, some of you were like, she said she didn't want labels, Grace, so that's why she didn't talk about it. And to which I say, well, being the first LGBT superhero is a pretty big label, so you can't really claim it if you're not willing to claim the LGBT label in the first place. But anyway, let's hope Lionsgate isn't so stupid. Although this is just really talk about stepping in it right out of the gate. I mean, they're doing so well. Why would the cast make a public, and also they're trying to push their hand by doing it publicly, right? Like, why would this become news for the public? Clearly they're like, the public will love it, and then Lionsgate will see that we're right. Instead, Lionsgate's like, you put a stain on my movie's opening weekend. I mean, first of all, the audience was 60% male, and a lot of that was huge fans of the franchise, where Tommy Oliver is a legend. He's the most popular Ranger there is. I think that people would not be, I think fans would be very unhappy with this. I think this would be a Ghostbusters level mistake in terms of gender change. And I'm curious how you guys feel, both non-Power Rangers fans and Power Rangers fans. And also, speaking of not being fans, I think it's odd that the cast, who must not be big Power Rangers fans if they would suggest such a thing, would push for such a strong fundamental change when they're still not even established as actors in any way, or the franchise isn't established. The whole thing is just very puzzling to me. And it's not that particularly long a story because it's so obviously a bad idea, but I thought we needed to discuss it. Now, speaking of gender change, that's the second story. You might have seen the headline like over a week ago that Alan Menken, with record box office numbers to embolden him, said that his dream live-action Ursula, because they're remaking The Little Mermaid, would be Harvey Fierstein. And Harvey Fierstein, tweeted out that he would love to do it. And he's already famous for gender bending, of course, in Hairspray. Now, the reason I'm only covering it now is that I've been thinking about what my position on this was. Now, because here it's complicated. It ends up not being that complicated when you think about it, but Here's my thought process. Undoubtedly, Harvey Fierstein would make a fabulous Ursula, and he would knock poor unfortunate souls out of the park. But Disney barely survived LeFou-gate, and that was a mere hiccup compared to making an iconic animated villain a drag queen. And I think that would be a little bit difficult to explain to kids, and something that parents wouldn't want to explain to kids. Also, we talked about how good of a representation LeFou was. How is this going to help, right? I mean, isn't this reinforcing stereotypes about the LGBT community? The LGBT community is already quite well established thanks to television, etc. Movies should be pushing it into a stronger, more sophisticated direction. For instance, I just recently watched It to prepare for the trailer that's coming out this week. And they actually have a gay male character in It. And they do, I think, one of the best jobs I've ever seen with having a gay character be part of a larger group and not having it define him. I mean, it's a big part of the character, but just as personal situations are for every character in It. But I thought it was handled really sophisticatedly well and in an extremely respectful manner. So this would seem like a little bit of a step backward to me. Also, Harvey Fierstein, talking about having to explain it to kids, he makes a great drag queen, but not a convincing one. It's not like RuPaul, right? All right, so anyway, then it hit me. Why does Ursula need to be a woman? Just make Ursula a guy, the Sea Warlock, and the problem is solved. We talk all the time about changing roles for, in terms of casting when it comes to the ethnicity of an actor. Like, just get the right person for the role. So why can't that apply to gender as well? Now, obviously, some people might be like, there are so few roles for women. Why would you go and take one and give it to guys? Well, look, I can't think of an actress who could do as good a job as Harvey Fierstein as Ursula, that would be as respectful to what Pat Carroll originally did. Pat Carroll's still alive, by the way, who did the original voice and singing for the character, but she's up there, and I just think she's not in a position to do it for the live action, which is, unfortunate. But I think that Harvey Fierstein would do an absolutely fabulous job and would be very true to the original character. So just make the change, a little bit of a change in the script, and everybody, I think, would be quite happy. Now, speaking of writing, that's actually the biggest story of the day. But, it's not a big metadata driver. People aren't searching about the upcoming potential writer's strike, but they should be, because it has the potential to really mess up a lot of upcoming movies and TV shows. So what's happening? Well, anyway, as we always know, Hollywood has had a tenuous relationship with writers, especially in the movie business, where, they hand their work in first, and then everyone messes with it until it gets to the theater, and often moviegoers go, that was a horrible script. And it's a little unfair sometimes because, they don't know who's tinkered with it since it was handed in. But TV writers have always had a really nice, cushy position. They get paid a lot of money. It's a steady gig. It's really the ideal gig, actually, unless you want to move into directing and other areas, producing, etc. TV writing has been the plum assignment when it comes to being a writer in Hollywood. But as TV enters a renaissance, that's actually changing. And that's one of the driving forces behind this potential strike. What happened late last week was that the Writers Guild negotiating team moved to allow the Writers Guild, all of the members of the union, to vote to strike. It's basically like the first warning shot across the bow. And the producers in Hollywood who were at the other end of the negotiating table totally freaked out and pointed fingers at the writers. But at the end of the day, a strike still looms. I don't think this would happen, I believe, until May, because that's when the current union contract is up between the union, the Writers Guild of America, and Hollywood. And so you have a little bit of time here. And I'm sure that Hollywood's ordering a rush job on all pending scripts to try and get out in front of this. Because the last time there was a strike, it was very bad. It took down, didn't take it down, but it severely hobbled the Bond franchise. You might recall Daniel Craig saying he was forced to write the script on set for Quantum of Solace, and he admitted he's not a writer. So these are the two problems that are a point of contention between the Writers Guild and Hollywood, and why writers are threatening to strike. One problem is that film writing salaries have eroded, and they've wiped away all the gains they made from the last strike. Then also TV writing. There's other problems about lack of diversity, wanting to have some family leave, etc. But I think this is the really big one. TV writing. TV writing is no longer that plush gig that it used to be. And there's a couple of reasons. One is that there are shorter seasons. It used to be that shows lasted up to 23 to 26 episodes because that was network. But now on cable and streaming, it's 8 to 13 episodes. So that's less paychecks. Also, since more shows are on cable and streaming, the union rates are lower for those outlets because they used to not be as prestigious or as prolific as network. Network used to be the gig that you wanted. So now that even though things have switched and actually all the big great TV shows are on pay, cable, and streaming, the producers are still saying, hey, well, you said we could pay you a lower rate in those areas, and that's what we're going to pay you. So the Writers Guild and the members of the union are obviously quite upset because that's where all the money is now. And I think, it's more 1% BS. I mean, here's the thing. The Writers Guild pointed out that Hollywood made $51 billion in profit last year, an industry high. So surely, with $51 billion in profit, that's not what they made. That's how much was left over after they paid off all their expenses. $51 billion. You can't give some to the writers, and considering how important they are. Now, of course, you don't want to overpay the writers. You don't want the writers to hold Hollywood hostage and all that. That's why you negotiate. And at the end of the day, great negotiations result in a deal that everybody's a little unhappy with. That's how you know you have a fair deal. But I think that it's pretty jerky of people, to be using an outdated writing rate to get cheaper scripts, but yet get great shows that are changing the industry and giving people great careers and making cable networks become the prime place for, think about it. Writers are largely responsible for FX and AMC, etc., being more lauded by viewers than the networks. And so how do you not reward that? It's absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I'm very strongly in favor of writers because I think they're very important. But anyway, I'm curious how you feel about this. It's particularly important if you're interested in being a writer. And I think that while unions sometimes can be difficult and hobble businesses, you see that in non-Hollywood businesses. Unions have driven a lot of businesses overseas sometimes for being greedy, but at the same time, they're a necessary evil, just like the other side's a necessary evil, right? I mean, you need unions to protect workers, obviously, from management in any business, including Hollywood. And it's very sad, but it's true. But, I don't think the Writers Guild is I don't think they're being overly aggressive here. I just don't think that's true at all. I think they would probably acquiesce on a few of their demands if the big ones were met, but it's not looking good. So we'll see what happens, but keep an eye on this. It's a very important story. Then as for the viewer question, KTB said to me, Grace, I have a question. And I don't know if you've answered this before or not. I might have a couple of times, but I think it's a good one, and so I think it's worth revisiting, especially because KTB has some specific examples. And it's something we discuss sometimes a lot in a heated fashion in the comments. All right, so KTB says, how does an actor move from TV to movies? As the viewer question led you talking about how actors can be to TV. Somebody asked about fan casting last week, and why does fan casting rarely get picked up by the actual movie? Why don't they listen to us? And I said a lot of times you guys pick somebody who's not viable, right? So that's why the producers don't pick them. So KTB says, because I've noticed that Chris Pratt did okay for himself, true, and Steve Carell has done TV and movies. Although some say that not all of his movies have been great, and he did The Office primarily. He did great movies when The Office was at its peak, and I think that, the fall from grace in both regards coincided. But anyway, how would you suggest people to move from Broadway or acting on a stage to either TV or movies? Does that transition from one medium to another, is that not smooth either? Great question. I particularly like that you brought in the Broadway angle because that's another place that actors get their start. Commercials too, etc. All right, so anyway, commercials don't really factor into this. Commercials are a way to pay your rent until you get either on Broadway, TV, or movies. All right, so this is how you do it. Oh, and also, KTB was very nice. Said, love your stuff, big supporter, keep up the good work, smiley face. Thank you, KTB, and I hope this is helpful. So there are a couple of situations here, right? All right, so a couple of ways you can move. One is that you're really successful. You're really hot, right? Either your production that you're in is really successful, or at the very least is getting really good reviews, right? Or winning lots of awards. That's how Josh Gad moved from the Book of Mormon into TV, and then Olaf helped him. Suddenly he struggled for a while. He was on some truly awful television shows, but then when he got Olaf, that not only propelled him forward, but it made him very, very valuable to Disney. And you can see that his biggest work continues to come from Disney, like Beauty and the Beast. And then Steve Carell, The Office was super hot. Everybody loved it. They thought it was very smart. It was winning lots. Actually, I don't think he actually ever won, but it was being nominated all the time. It was anchoring Thursday night TV. And then they very smartly put him in movies that really corresponded with the character he played on The Office. So Hollywood movies capitalized on his TV success. Then another way you can make the jump is redefining yourself. Make yourself seen in a different way, right? Chris Pratt, and also it's important to note that Chris Pratt wasn't a big TV star. He was a secondary character in Parks and Recreation that wasn't watched by that many people. But then, if he hadn't gotten those abs for Zero Dark 30, he never would have made the jump. The abs are what made the difference. Suddenly, Chris Pratt, when he made the jump to movies, he wasn't the same guy that people knew on TV, and very few people knew him on TV again. So that was crucial. And then also Bryan Cranston. He was in Malcolm in the Middle for a very long time, very, very long time. And that would have been a great career all on its own because you get residuals. Once a show passes the 5-season mark, which is why they always throw a party and have a cake after a show makes 5 seasons, is because that's the number you need to get into syndication. And once you get into syndication, you get paychecks for life. It's pretty sweet. So Bryan Cranston could have just lived off of his Malcolm in the Middle money forever, but then when he did Breaking Bad, he totally changed who he was. Also, it was incredibly well regarded. It was getting great ratings. It was another great show for AMC. And then it was, he was getting nominated. It was just a really big deal. And that's why he was able to kind of make the jump to movies. He didn't make such a great jump to movies, but I feel that's Bryan Cranston's fault for the stuff that he picked. And so And so that's what it has to be. Also, you have to be fresh to movies and or have redefine yourself and fresh on TV. For instance, someone like Kerry Washington, just been on, she's been in a lot of movies too. She's not worked. It's taken too long. You kind of get a staleness to yourself, and you have to reinvent yourself for that to get out of that problem. Also, one of you asked me about Shamar Moore, and you're like, why'd you put his picture up there, and why couldn't he be Green Lantern? He's just too TV, and he's not even like good TV. He's just like on, he has a fan base. Great for him, but he's not even on prestige television, and that's a problem. So, you have to be hot in terms of, like heat, that's what I'm talking about. You have to have heat in terms of ratings or reviews or awards. And also you have to redefine yourself again. And also think about someone like Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's doing great on TV. She not only had Seinfeld, but then she had The New Adventures of Old Christine. Then she has Veep right now. She wins Emmy after Emmy every year for that. But she's just too TV at this point. She's too entrenched. People are too familiar with her and being in TV. She has like a TV vibe to her acting. I'd also like to point out that Breaking Bad was a show that was filmed in a filmic style. So you can imagine that person. That's another reason making the jump. Whereas Veep, various sitcom-y, right? So that's another reason you don't see that making the jump. So these things all factor in. And I think you really have to kind of like get an eye for it and be like, okay, from like a momentum perspective, where is this person right now? How do you pitch them? That's the best thing you should think to yourself. For somebody else or even yourself. What's the pitch when you go in the room? What is the incentive for someone to hire you and to have you make the jump? What do you have going for you? What are you going to give them to give to their boss to sell you and to audiences to sell you? That's all very, very important. All right, so I hope that answers your question, KTB. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. That's today's morning movie news. Please write down below today's top 3 stories, KTB's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.